Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Philippine National Anthem to be led by the up-and-coming soprano, Miss Jade Richo.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng luwalhatit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya ng pagmay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Thank you, Jade. You may now take your seats. To officially open the forum and give us the welcome remarks, let's give a very warm welcome to the President of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Mr. Julian Payne.
Good morning, all, fellow business leaders and stakeholders in Philippine business, and also all those millions watching the live feed of this event around the world. We're hoping it will surpass those who watched the Oscar Awards last night. Also, welcome to all of you who support the continued growth and prosperity of business in the Philippines. It's my honor on behalf of the Joint Foreign Chambers of Commerce to welcome you. As you know, the JFC comprises the American Chamber of Commerce, the Australian-New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the European Chamber of Commerce, the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Korean Chamber of Commerce, and the Philippine Association of Multinational Companies Regional Headquarters. I'd like to congratulate all of you who have come here so early in the face of the challenge of Manila traffic. It's a credit to you all, and we appreciate it. In fact, if we today are successful in addressing the challenges facing the Philippines as you have been in facing traffic this morning, this will be a great success, this conference. Today's Arangkada Forum is the fifth since Arangkada was launched. It's an important time to look back at achievements, to look forward at opportunities. Indeed, in planning this year's event, the JFC had to decide whether to put the focus on past year's assessment of past year's performance or on looking forward to the future. And while recognizing the value of stock taking and lessons learned and experience, all of which is reflected in this document of the evaluation which you all have, the JFC concluded that this was an appropriate time to look forward and how to spur onward and forward inclusive growth on a sustainable basis for the Philippine economy. Like others, the JFC was also very conscious that we're at a critical juncture in the deciding on the future of the Philippine political economic management. The window for new efforts by the present administration is closing. By my calculation, there's 121 days left. The window for a new administration is beginning to open under a leadership yet unknown. Awareness of this critical juncture reinforced our view that we should take advantage of the great opportunity a pre-election and election period had to ask candidates and ourselves to think about where we want to go ahead in the next 6 years and indeed in the next decade. I must say, though, we must give credit for what has been achieved by the present administration, by business leaders, around the country in the various sectors, the winning sectors that have performed so well. But, while giving such credit, there is always a but. The big question is one of perspective. Is the wine glass we see half full or half empty? Is it still not enough wine for all and not a continuing supply? Looking back, we see a case where foreign direct investment has not grown dramatically compared with our neighbors. Looking back, we see unemployment, which remains high, and looking back, we see the massa, which still remains poor. It appears that the wine glass is still half empty. It is in this context that the JFC planned this Arangkada Forum today. And basically, there are three features of it which I wish you to particularly note. First of all, we have panels, distinguished panels, not to discuss each of the big winners, but to discuss certain cross-cutting issues that are addressed by all the big winners. The second thing was to look forward to the future, not just 6 years, but for a decade. And the third was to invite the drafters of the policy notes, and indeed to invite all of you to think about bolder new ideas, to think outside the box of how we can really get this economy moving even faster forward over the next decade. In closing, may I say, welcome to the 5th Arangkada Forum for a bolder and more inclusive decade. Let's now get on with the show. Salamat. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. And now to give everyone an explanation of the forum program and the Arangkada assessment, we have the Senior Advisor of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Mr. John Forbes. Let's give him a big hand.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me, on behalf of the American Chamber and the Joint Foreign Chambers, to welcome returnees. Some people have been here since the very first forum, and those who are new to the Arangkada process. I'll try to quickly, in the 10 minutes I have, explain that and the documents that you have with you today. I don't have a clicker, so can I have the next slide, please? Could we put the next, well, let's see, how we do, it's hard to see that. Those are some of our sponsors from the USAID, U.S. Agency for National Development, and the 7 joint foreign chambers who together have this project, the Arangkada Philippines Project. Next slide, please. And we are joined today by many corporate sponsors and Philippine business groups, quite a number of whom have taken tables. Thank you very, very much. Next slide. Our purpose is to observe our 5th anniversary since we launched the Arangkada document in December of 2010 in this photograph with former DTI Secretary Greg Domingo. And to release our 5th assessment. Everyone should have a copy of this book. I think it weighs about 1.5 kilograms. It's almost 400 pages, my apologies, but it's rich in advocacy material. And we are assembling private and public sector experts, over 40 today, looking ahead for a decade at a bold and inclusive decade. Next slide. When we launched Arangkada, we set a goal of 75 billion pesos. Next slide, please. $75 billion, sorry, not pesos, and 10 million jobs, and $1 trillion in tax revenue over a decade. In 2010, we look forward for a decade with those targets, if all of the recommendations were implemented. This is an interactive forum. Next slide. And we'd like to hear from you, wherever you are in the world or in this room, by SMS or on Twitter. We usually are the trending subject matter on Twitter while the forum is going on, Facebook, or by email. If we can't answer your question today, and I sure there'll be many questions. Send it to us, communicate it to us, and we'll endeavor to do so as soon as possible. We've got a great program today. Next slide. It's bigger and better. We have a special panel with presidential candidates' representatives, 4 of them. We're very honored as foreign chambers to do this for the first time, I believe, in our history as a coalition. And we have great panels that will look ahead at how to raise the Philippines to the ASEAN 6 average in total investment, in reducing unemployment, in having high, sustained, and inclusive growth, and modernizing infrastructure. Next slide. Panel 4. Panel 5, becoming more competitive, to minimize the bureaucracy and maximize governance. We will be presenting, whoops, I see a typo, that's supposed to be our 4th Lifetime Achievement Award to a very distinguished Filipino who you all know, but is not yet present, and we will announce that this afternoon, who the person is. And then our keynote speech by Chief Justice Sereno will round out this very full day of activities. Next slide, please. Just an advertisement for what Arangkada has been doing in the last 4 years. We've had over 180 advocacy dialogue meetings with senior officials in all branches of government. We have partnered with the leading Philippine business groups and industry groups, as well as with the National Competitiveness Council. We have an online presence with 1.1 million page views from 285,000 users in 196 countries. So if anybody out there is from the 197th or 198th countries, help us to get to 200. We do workshops, and this is our 5th fora. We've done 5 assessments, which I held up a moment ago. We've done 4 policy briefs, and we have just recently done 7 policy notes. And we have news clips to over 2,500 subscribers. It's free, and if you're not getting it and want to get it, let us know. We recently released, next slide please, a broadband policy note, and you all should have a copy. We printed enough copies for everyone to have one in their delegate kit today. It's quite comprehensive, and it has extensive recommendations on how to solve the challenge that we currently have of relatively slow and very expensive broadband in the Philippines. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we have policy notes. We call them the Big Winner policy notes. We've done 7, and you will find them in your assessment publication. For example, the agribusiness policy note follows in section 3, the section on agriculture, and you go alphabetically to tourism at the end of part 3, and you'll find the policy note on tourism. With one exception, they're no more than 4 pages long, and they look forward into the next decade. Now, what does the assessment do? It rates 462 recommendations, and the ratings are done by almost 30 experts who are people who are knowledgeable in their field. They come from academe, they come from investors, and they come from former public sector officials. There's an overall, we go to the next slide, please. On page Roman numeral 14, there's a complicated summary on successive pages, which you can flip through, and you'll see a rather exhaustive way in which they've all been rated. There's a little confusion, and you see where we rate them as moved or not moving. And there's a progression from year to year. You'll see the statistics there for 5 years of how they started slowly, and they built up a momentum. They reached last year, all the moving, about 75%, and they've stayed at that for this year. But we've done a new slide last night, which is not in the book, the next slide, which actually shows the green at the top. as that category I just mentioned as moving, and the red at the bottom as those that are not moving or stalled or maybe have had backward regression. And so you can see that the former has gone up quite a bit year by year. And then within that category, at the bottom you see the yellow moving from 7 to over 30 by 2015. The yellow, that's completed. And the next one, which is black, which is started, also going up. And then finally, the third category, substantial progress, is the blue, also going up. And all of that is indicative that of the 462 recommendations rated that were made by 9 Forum and by investors way back in 2009 and 2010, that there has been great progress. Not enough progress, but great progress in the Philippines. Next slide. I just want to call your attention to an erratum. We have the 2011 page printed by mistake, and we have inserted a replacement page in your book. Just make sure you have the replacement page, which is 5th anniversary, which matches the previous page. Now, in part 1, I'm just going to present a flavor before I finish of what's in the document. There are 4 parts to it. Part 1 was growing too slow. But in the next slide, if you look at the red bar, that's the Philippines. It certainly was true. These are by decades that in the 80s, the Philippines was growing too slow. It was a bottom dweller at the time. There was a crisis here. There was a recovery of democracy here, and then of the economy. And then you see progressively through the 90s, and also in the first decade of this millennium, that the Philippines is recovering in growth. And now, in the first 4 years of this decade, the Philippines, which is red, is the fastest growing economy of the ASEAN 6. We're not measuring beyond the ASEAN 6. Of the 10, the 6 largest economies. And you know they are Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. So the Philippines economy is doing very, very well at the present time. It could do better, but it's great that it's doing very, very well. The next slide is quite interesting because this is the annual average FDI per administration in millions of US dollars. And because of the great outflow of investment in the crisis in the Marcos administration, that average was only 117 million. And now you can see over the administrations of President Corazon Aquino, Ramos, Estrada, and Arroyo, it grew to an average from Ramos to Arroyo of about 1.5 billion. But this administration has raised the average now to almost 4 billion. It's been an average of 6 billion the last 2 years. That's 500% more than in 2010. It's not enough, as many commentators have pointed out, but it's great progress. Part 2 is called Becoming More Competitive. And I'll only put up one slide here. Next slide. I can't see what it is. FDI, there we are. This slide really rates 15 competitive indicators, and it's done by Mr. Pimentel, who's our research assistant, and it shows the red are declines in WEF and other international ratings, and the greens are increases. And you can see a pattern of high reds a number of years ago, and then a rapid pattern and an increasing pattern in which the greens are more numerous than the reds. And I think if you're familiar with many of these ratings on corruption and WEF and IMD, et cetera, that you're familiar, and I'll just show you one of these, which has been widely publicized in the next slide. You see where the Philippines was on the red line some years ago, and it has now grown to be 47th. If you look over in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the Philippines is ahead of Vietnam at 56, sort of clustered in there with Indonesia at 37 and Thailand at 32, and is Bill Luce will tell you this afternoon, the goal, which I think is achievable, is to get into the top third by later this year. And now we go into and I won't go into much detail, but just to give you a quick tutorial on how the document is organized, and the part 3 and part 4. Part 3 on the next slide, I've taken roads. The WEF has improved its rating of Philippine roads, and you'll see that in the section on infrastructure, that roads have improved, but other things have not, particularly rail. But our recommendation here, next slide, on roads, has actually been completed. Under DPWH, a budget has been put into place to improve the quality of all national roads and bridges throughout the country, and a third of that budget is going to Mindanao, and we've rated this recommendation on roads as being completed. But the next slide, recommendation 7, which pertains to intracity and intercity rail, has not been completed. However, in contrast to 2011, when nothing was happening, in 2012, we've got finally, by 2014 and now, it started. And if what has been started is completed, we'll have substantial progress if we do a rating in the future. Let's look in the next slide at the spending on infrastructure, which was advocated to double between, you look at that incredible low level, the reds. The blue is the rest of the budget, but the red is public sector spending on infrastructure. And you see that it's gone up, up, and up, now to 5% of GDP in 2016. And if you add PPP on top, and if you add private sector spending on telecommunications and power, then you get much more than 5% being spent on infrastructure. The country needs it, and it needs eventually to go up to 10% and sustain that. Next slide. Let's jump to part 4, which is the general business environment that supports all the big winter sectors. And let's just take labor, because we've really been thrilled by our cooperation with Secretary Linda Baldos, who I understand is in Bohol today, and that there is a delegation from the department, from TESDA. The labor policy of this government has been extremely good, and if you look at other countries which have frequent strikes, the Philippines has great industrial peace. I've chosen 3 of the recommendations here, and this will conclude my remarks with the next slide. Recommendation 1, which was to modernize the labor code. It's a huge law. You can't do it all at once, but you do it piecemeal. And that is what is ongoing for the last several years, and therefore our experts have rated this as substantial progress. But in recommendation 2, we've had backward regression, and that, of course, is something you've heard us talk about frequently, is the large number of non-working holidays in the country, which reached a record number last year because of special events involving His Holiness visit and the APEC summit. But nevertheless, our goal was to reach an ASEAN 6 average of only 15. And so we rate that as backward. We all love holidays, but it's not good for creating jobs. Recommendation 4. We started with a situation in 2010 on wages, as the minimum wage was the average wage, and that discourages job creation. And what this administration started with was a dual wage policy, which tries to set the minimum wage a little bit above the poverty wage, and then have a productivity tier added onto that. So this has been rated as substantial progress. Let me quickly, in the next slide, you all know that the Joint Foreign Chambers, Philippine business groups cooperate on legislative reform, and we have success. Sometimes we need to be patient and wait 10 years. In the case of the Competition Act, which the President signed last year, we waited 27 years. However, we do count the total number of business and economic reforms by Congress. And this slide will show in the two columns on the right, the 16th and 15th Congress, 17 plus 34 is 51 laws that we've counted in the two Congresses under the Aquino administration, and by contrast, a total of 42 in three Congresses of the previous administration. So contrary to what may be popular opinion, and I hope the media is listening, the last two Congresses, or the current Congress and the previous one, the 16th and the 15th, have been quite productive. Could they be more productive? Yes, of course. All of us could be more productive, but there's a good record. Now, I'm going to end at that point. I may have gone beyond my time, but this is a valuable document. I hope our guests in government and our guests in media and everyone can page through it. It's like the 4,000 pages of the TPP. No one reads it all, but you can dip into it and you'll find it edifying. And I thank you very much, and let's Arangkada.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes, for giving us a bird's eye view on today's event, as well as how important this year's assessment is. And as he said, an exciting morning awaits everyone today, as we have organized a special panel discussion with the representatives of presidential candidates. And to welcome them, we have the President of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Mr. Rick Santos.
Good morning. Distinguished guests, friends of Arangkada, I'm pleased to introduce and moderate this special panel at which we expect to hear bold ideas of the presidential candidates on the theme of our forum. Unfortunately, we will not hear directly from the candidates as they're canvassing the electorate from north to south now that the official campaign has started. Vice President Binay, Senator Defensor Santiago, Mayor Duterte, Senator Poe, and Secretary Rojas all sent their regrets. However, 4 of the candidates have sent as their representatives 4 well-known persons in their capacity as spokespersons and also serve as economic advisors. Let me now call each to the stage in order of the last name of their candidate, which is in the order in which they will speak following the recent Comelec debate. First off, we have Secretary Margarito Gary Teves, the former Secretary of Finance and Congressman from Negros Oriental, is advising Vice President Jejomar Binay. Secretary Teves holds a master's degree in development economics from Williams College. A big hand of applause for Secretary Gary Teves. Come on up. Next up, we have Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. He is the Senate Majority Leader. He is a representative for Mayor Rodrigo Duterte. He's a graduate of the University of the Philippines and also has a law degree from the Ateneo University. So please, big hand of applause for Senator Cayetano. Is he here? He's on his way. Next up, we have Mayor Rex Gatchalian, who is the spokesperson for Senator Poe. He was elected to Congress at the age of 27, serving 2 terms before graduating. He's also became the mayor of Valenzuela City in 2010, and he's a summa cum laude graduate of George Washington University. Big hand for Rex. And finally, we have Representative Miro Kimbo, who is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee of the House of Representatives and has served as the District of Marikina since 2010. Before entering politics, he was the CEO of Pag-ibig and also earned his law degree at the University of the Philippines. Big hand for Representative Miro Kimbo. So welcome all the representatives. We've asked each panelist to speak for 10 minutes. We've asked each panelist to speak for 10 minutes after all have finished the questions. The questions will be asked by 2 business leaders whom I will now call to the stage. First up is Mr. George Barcelone. He's the president of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, PCCI, the country's largest business organization. Big hand for George. Next up, we have Mr. Julian Payne, who is the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines and a former senior official with the Government of Canada. Thank you, esteemed panel. I will now hand it over to Mr. Julian Payne, the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, to ask the first question.
Yes, loud and clear. Yes, the first question is for Secretary Tevez on behalf of the President Binay. We would like to know what the position is of Vice President Binay on corporate tax rates in the Philippines, which are amongst the highest in ASEAN and constitute a major barrier of business located in the Philippines to remain internationally competitive. And actually, there are two questions. Will your candidate reduce the high level
Actually, Julian, can I just interrupt? Can we just get each of the candidates to give their statements first for 10 minutes? Yeah.
Sorry, somebody asked me to ask a question.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. So I guess starting with Secretary Tevez, if maybe you could just give your 10-minute statement. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Our distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's an honor to be speaking before you to share Vice President Binay's vision for Philippine business and economy. A recent Manila Standard survey of 3,000 voters nationwide found that poverty is still the most pressing problem in the country today. For Vice President Binay, poverty can be addressed by focusing on three things. One, the creation of more stable jobs and livelihood opportunities for people in the cities and even more so in the countryside. Two, more meaningful income for our workers. And three, adequate and affordable food for every Filipino. The Philippine economy needs a sustained 7 to 8% GDP growth per annum to reduce poverty even faster and to attain more inclusive growth sooner. This can be achieved with the right mix of economic and social policies of a government that is sensitive to both the needs of its constituents and those who do business in the country. More importantly, the government must be committed to the proper implementation and timely delivery of priority projects. Our country has been too focused on the services industry that we've neglected sectors that can provide the most number of jobs for less educated and low-skilled workers. In this regard, a Binay presidency will prioritize the following sectors: agriculture, increase farm productivity and raise farmers' income by one, rethinking the 100% rice self-sufficiency policy. This includes reforming the National Food Authority and ending its monopoly on rice importation so that it can focus more on food security. Two, allotting a bigger budget for rural infrastructure like farm-to-market roads, irrigation systems, and post-harvest facilities. And three, promoting crop diversification and high-value crops and encouraging our farmers to shift from subsistence farming to agribusiness. Manufacturing and exports will be made more competitive regionally by one, accelerating the implementation of infrastructure projects in the countryside to complement an industry dispersal program. Two, securing affordable and reliable power supply. And three, ensuring that mining taxes in the country are fair and consistent with international best practices in order to attack large, environmentally and socially responsible mining investors. Micro, small, medium enterprises. One, streamlining the business registration system to accelerate the establishment of more MSMEs. Two, boosting digital infrastructure to allow MSMEs to connect their products and services in domestic and overseas markets. This will be facilitated by the creation of a Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, that will focus on the Philippines' digital infrastructure. Three, giving more incentives to companies that participate in the government's training and apprenticeship program for helping train the workforce and increase labor productivity. To attract more investors to create the jobs we need, a Binay presidency will prioritize amending the economic provisions of the Constitution that restricts the entry of foreign direct investments, or FDIs, in some major sectors of the Philippine economy. Opening up the economy will also address one hurdle that is keeping the Philippines from joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. Joining TPP is expected to develop our manufacturing, textile, and shipbuilding industries. It will also give the Philippines preferential treatment status in the BPO sector. A Binay presidency will immediately convene the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDAC, to discuss the measure and certify it as urgent in the next Congress. The Philippines currently ranks 103rd out of 189 countries in the World Bank's Doing Business report in 2016. It is still easier to do business in Malaysia, which ranked 18, Thailand 49, Brunei 84th, and Vietnam 90th. On that note, we need to continue making it increasingly easier for investors to do business in the Philippines. A Binay presidency will endeavor to shorten business registration process from 16 steps in 34 days to 6 steps over 8 days. One-stop shops will also be established to simplify the application process from the 165 required signatures that take a minimum of 2 years to accelerate the construction of new power plants. Finally, a Binay presidency will reduce both personal and corporate income tax rates to a level that is more competitive or consistent with our ASEAN peers. Tax brackets must also be adjusted to inflation. We have a menu of options to compensate the revenue loss, namely, one, passage of revenue-generating measures, such as the Rationalization of Fiscal Incentives Act, which, when combined with the recently passed TIMTA, or Tax Incentives and Management Act, can generate additional revenues. Two, sale of government assets and privatization of select GOCCs, such as PAGCOR, PCSO, or Philippine Charity Sweepstakes, and the Philippine Port Authorities. And three, continue to improve the tax effort by, among others, simplifying tax administration and embarking on a more aggressive campaign to catch and convict tax evaders. A BNI presidency will spend at least 5% of GDP annually to an integrated countrywide infrastructure development program that will build new roads, bridges, railways, ports, and airports, and upgrade old ones. The level of spending must be gradually increased to 7% of GDP as government revenues allow. We'll aim to build one mega project per region and one major project per province. We will not only continue, but also enhance the implementation of the PPP strategy. This entails the following. One, passing legislation such as amendments to the Build, Operate, Transfer law, strictly honoring contracts, and having consistent government policies. And three, eliminating technical and legal bottlenecks to accelerate the completion of important infrastructure projects. We need to shift to a dual airport system. Pending or stalled developments at Clark International Airport must be accelerated to help ease congestion in NAIA. We're open to alternative locations such as Cavite if these are feasible and if the private investors are prepared to shoulder the entire project costs. Similarly, use more of the underutilized Subic and Batangas ports to free up the Port of Manila. There are several ongoing road projects in Metro Manila, and extension of our mass transit systems have just started to be implemented. In the interim, we support the application of the 3 E's as suggested by Ed Yap of MAP. 1, road engineering. 2, education of all stakeholders. And 3, enforcement of traffic rules to help lessen traffic congestion in Metro Manila. A policy environment that is more conducive to business will allow local and foreign firms to thrive in the Philippines. This in turn will attract more capital, generate more jobs, and provide additional revenues to enable the state to take better care of the poor and marginalized. The Philippines takes pride in our labor force, known worldwide for speaking good English and for being hardworking. A BNI presidency will continue to invest in human capital development through better education and health services. A BNI presidency will continue K-12 and further improve the program by integrating an apprenticeship component similar to the University of Makati's dual training system, or DTS. Under the DTS, the school and a partner company ensure that the students are given appropriate training in theory and practice. DTS equips students with a set of skills developed to suit company needs, thereby improving the employability after high school. In addition to skills and competence, a healthy workforce is beneficial to employers too. A BNI presidency will implement a nationwide program similar to the globally recognized Yellow Card program in Makati, which reduces out-of-pocket expenses by providing beneficiaries free material, child and early care, free outpatient consultation and medicines, and government-subsidized hospitalization on top of PhilHealth benefits. But for PhilHealth and Yellow Card program to be truly useful, health facilities need to be upgraded. We shall ensure proper health budget utilization and strengthen the ability of the LGUs to deliver health services by promptly giving their fair share of sin tax collections. This is expected to help improve public hospitals and health facilities and enable them to hire more staff and procure adequate medical supplies. As an experienced chief executive, BNI takes a pragmatic approach on administration and development. Social programs on health and education, among others, will be implemented consistent with fiscal prudence. All these are aimed at providing a policy environment that will make the Philippines more conducive and attract even more investors. Under a BNI presidency, the government's role as an enabler will be played to the hilt. He shall periodically meet and consult with the business sector to get your thoughts and insights. He is committed to long-term policies and programs that strengthen the partnership between business and government to arrive at more win-win solutions. Governance to the government, business to the businessmen. Displayed are the top 5 priorities within the first 100 days of the BNI presidency. BP BNI, should he win as president, will fine-tune these priorities in consultation with the business sector. We are often asked if a BNI presidency will continue reforms initiated by the Aquino administration. Yes, he will. BP BNI believes that development requires sustained implementation of good reforms, such as the conditional cash transfer and the PPP programs, with some improvements. In summary, a BNI presidency aims to implement the Makati City model, foster a pro-business environment that will allow local and foreign firms to flourish, increase revenues from the private sector, will then enable the government to help more of its people through more jobs, more meaningful incomes, and adequate and affordable food for every Filipino. In short, bring about more inclusive growth faster, ensuring that the benefits of economic growth and progress reach the entire population, most especially the poor and marginalized sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Teves, for explaining the positions of Vice President Binay. We'd now like to call Senator Cayetano and kindly ask you to explain the positions of Mayor Duterte.
There is a season for everything, a time for all events under the heavens, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to build, and a time to tear down. Good morning, everybody. I heard this is the most relaxed business group, so please relax. To the organizers, thank you very much for this opportunity to hear the different candidates, to assess way before the election our stand on different economic issues, and to get a grip of what kind of presidency you will have, because most of the time in the Philippines, it's a surprise. In the US, you have primaries 1 year before the election, and a year before the primaries, you have the debates and the run-up to the primary. So 2 years before the election, they start campaigning. And by the election day, you know everything about the candidate, the party, and their stand. It's not so here, so forums like this are very important. Talking about the United States, Ronald Reagan, one of my favorite US presidents, gave his view of how the government views the economy. He said it can be summed up this way: if the economy moves, tax it. If it moves faster, regulate it. If it stops, subsidize it. Fortunately, he did not know much about the Philippines and about Philippine politicians, because the view of many businessmen in the Philippines of our economy is like this, and of Philippine officials from the barangay level up to the office of the president. If your business moves, how much do I get? If it moves faster or grows faster, how much more than I get? And if it stops, do I still get my cut? Given more time and maybe another opportunity, or maybe during the Q&A, allow Mayor Duterte and I, our tandem, to present our full platform, including our views on specific issues on the economy, or we can even give you some papers and a keynote presentation to show you our views on each and every aspect of the economy. However, today, because of limited time, allow me to address the core issue. As businessmen, you want things to get done. And that's what the Duterte-Cayetano tandem is all about. Fast action, decisive solutions. There are always only 4 concerns that businessmen move forward to politicians, to government, and to policymakers. 1, peace and order. 2, corruption or good governance. 3, consistent and reliable public policy, regulations that are not whimsical or don't change depending on the mood of government officials, especially the BIR. A level playing field. And number 4, infrastructure needed. This did not come from us. This came from all international and local groups. So all of us here before you today will basically tell you the same things. And of course, we know who you are, so we also know what you want to hear. So the main issue is really who can get things done. And with all due respect to my colleagues, it will not be a lively forum if I will not be open, but I mean no disrespect. Corruption. There is a candidate here who cannot talk about corruption. And if he wins, it will just be like, you can clap if you want, that doesn't mean you won't vote for him. If he wins, it will just be like the ERAP or GMA or Marcos time, because these corruption issues will continue to hound him. There are other consistent and reliable public policy, infrastructure, the speed. The Aquino administration has done much, but there's also a lot of areas in energy, in power. There are 17 towers that were knocked down now in Mindanao, and they're not, it seems that government is helpless to put it back up. In our infrastructure, in our trains, it seems that they are helpless to fix the MRT and the LRT. They approve a 900 billion mass transportation system for Metro Manila, 100 billion for Manila to Bulacan alone, yet the Mindanao railway system, which is 200 kilometers and only costs 76 billion, has been in the table of NEDA since 2010. 2012, the feasibility study for phase 1 was already made, and still it's not moving. All the economic models, best practices, is available to all of us. It's just a matter of who can implement decisively and how to get the job done. Of course, there are issues, for example, like mining. You do have to know if we are pro or anti. That's one of the problems of this administration. They claim to be pro-responsible mining, but all the miners say that they are anti-mining. So you will not get straight answers here in forums like this. You have to assess the character of the candidates, their track record, and find out how they decided in the past. In Davao City, excuse me, I just drove in from Baguio and just had 2 hours sleep, so I'm a little bit hoarse. In Davao City, when the mayor just became, Mayor Duterte just became mayor almost 30 years ago, the business community approached him and said, Mayor, we want a dialogue. And the mayor said, tell me what to do. What can I do for business? And the businessman said something simple. Mayor, take care of peace and order. We'll take care of doing business. What did Mayor Duterte do? He took care of peace and order. And as a region, Davao has one of the highest growth rate, and Davao City consistently is growing and has one of the highest growth rate outside Metro Manila, sometimes even overtaking Metro Manila. But the mayor went a step further. He made it more business-friendly. In the city of Davao, they have a 3-day rule. All permits, 3 days. If you cannot get your permit in 3 days, the department head beside the mayor will give you the permit, and the department head will have to explain to the mayor and to the businessman why the permit was not given. If the department head cannot explain, she or he will be fired. If a janitor makes a mistake in that department, the department head will be held accountable. The mayor believes in command responsibility. He doesn't believe in excuses. I see much of my wife in his style of administration. When Mayor Lani became mayor of Taguig, we had complaints about taxes, about public policy. It was very erratic. First, they'll say no new taxes, then there's new taxes. Even the call center that is immune to corruption, our former mayor found a way to shake them down by requiring a ID for all non-Taguig residents in call centers to pay 800 pesos. And during the day, an inspector would come and say, I want to go table by table and see if they all have IDs. No, so politicians will be very creative in finding a way to get the things they want done. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not business-friendly, but it's pocket-friendly. What did Mayor Lani do? Simple, she talked to the businessmen. I'll take care of the city. I'll take care of peace and order. I'll make it simple for you. I'll put up a one-stop shop. Let's talk now. 3 years, no new taxes. It's her 5th year, there's no new taxes, but she more than doubled already the budget because the businessmen have faith and are paying taxes. Fort Bonifacio now, 550,000 pesos per square meter. In Arca South, the Ayalas bought it for over 30,000. Within a few months, they sold 20 hectares at 120,000 per square meter, 3 years to pay. Now, they are selling at 220,000 per square meter, 3 years to pay, all sold out. No? The Ombudsman, the Civil Service, and LG and DILG have given us awards for #1 in anti-red tape and one of the 3 which were given recognition, one of the 3 cities that has the best business taxation process. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, going back to President Reagan said that the 9 most feared words in the US or in the American language is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. There's a time for everything, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a time for change. It's time to change his words to the most endearing of them all. I'd like to see the day after 2016 where businessmen will be proud to accept and shake the hands of government officials who come to you and say, I'm from the Duterte Cayetano administration. We get things done for you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano, for explaining the positions of Mayor Duterte. We'd now like to call Mayor Gatchalian up to the stage to explain the positions of Senator Poe. Mayor Gatchalian.
Good morning. I'd like to, first of all, thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to expound on the program of government of Senator Grace Poe, Gobyernong May Puso. Our vision is simple. It is to see that every Filipino is able to live a life of dignity. Over the last 5 years, our country has enjoyed an unprecedented period of sustained high economic growth and price stability. Growth has averaged over 6% a year, among the highest in the world, and inflation is now below 1%. At the same time, however, it is important to recognize that many Filipinos have been left out. Only 1% of Filipinos control 60% of the GDP. Wide income inequality persists. A fifth of our population earns under $1.25 a day. Employment generation has been dismal, growing at 0.17% in 2013, despite registering 7.3% GDP growth. We have the highest poverty incidence in Southeast Asia outside Laos. So how then do we turn the vision into a reality? Our main goal shall be to reduce widespread poverty and glaring inequalities between rich and poor families, between urban and rural areas, between Christians and Muslims and other cultural minorities. Our fighting target is to reduce the incidence of absolute poverty from the current 25% of the population to the 2015 Millennium Development Goal for the Philippines of 16%. We must be able to achieve higher economic growth while simultaneously ensuring that every Filipino, especially the poor and the other disadvantaged groups, benefits from that growth. Our economic agenda, therefore, has a growth component as well as a poverty alleviation component. Our fighting target will be an average annual GDP growth rate of at least 7%, which if sustained over a long period, will enable the country to graduate from a low-middle income economy to a high economy of a developed economy within a generation. To achieve faster economic growth, we shall focus on the following areas: investment, infrastructure, fiscal policies, international trade, science, technology, and innovation, and energy. We can achieve faster economic growth by generating more rapid growth in investments, especially foreign direct investments. Our target is to increase the share of investments to GDP from the current 20% to 30%. We will reduce restrictions against FDIs, beginning with the reduction of the foreign investment negative list. We shall also push for economic liberalization of the Constitution. Good governance, particularly the principles of transparency and accountability, are key to promoting investment. This in line with our policy of zero corruption. On the first things we will do is to issue an executive order establishing freedom of information among our government agencies. We will enhance the investment climate by ensuring a standard implementation of ease of doing business reforms across the country. We will maximize the potential of ICT to eliminate long queues. We'll honor government contracts with private sector. Our goal is to promote a stable, fair, and consistent policy environment. To level the playing field, we will strictly enforce the provisions of the new competition law. We will be taking a strong position against crime. We'll modernize the PNP and the Coast Guard in order to promote peace and order. We will honor prior commitments to peace. We will work to bring about enduring peace in Mindanao and other conflict-ridden parts of the country. Our target is to increase infrastructure spending to 7% of GDP from the current 4%. We will continue to pursue public-private sector partnership in our infrastructure projects. We will address delays in the implementation of projects and increase the absorptive capacity of our agencies and local government units. To ensure a stable macroeconomic environment conducive for investment growth, we will continue to exercise fiscal prudence. We will strive to keep the budget deficit at 2% of GDP. We will work to raise the tax effort from 14% of GDP to 20%. We will improve tax compliance and rationalize tax incentives by making them well-targeted, transparent, performance-based, and temporary in nature. Our immediate objective will be to adjust tax rates and tax valuations for inflation. Then we shall work to reduce tax rates. We intend to lower the corporate tax rate to 25% from the present 30% and the highest marginal income tax rate to 25% from the current 32%. We believe that lowering the taxes will improve tax efforts by reducing the incentive to avoid or evade taxes. To expand trade, we shall continue to strengthen bilateral and multilateral free trade agreements with other countries. In joining trade agreements, we will always safeguard the paramount interests of our citizens and ensure that the proper safety nets are in place for sectors who may be adversely affected. The country can achieve higher rates of sustained economic growth by absorbing and applying advances in global technology. Raising productivity must be increasingly driven by application of new technology and innovation in all aspects of the economy. We shall increase the share of public spending on science and technology research and development to at least 1.5% of GDP. We will promote research collaboration among government, industry, and the academe, protect intellectual property rights, and establish more effective mechanisms to facilitate entrepreneurship and commercialization of new discoveries. Our goal is to achieve energy security, energy affordability, and energy sustainability. Our plans include the following. We shall set up a one-stop shop within the Department of Energy to smoothen the process of setting up power plants. It currently takes 150 signatures to set up a single power plant. We will establish the interconnection of the Mindanao-Visayas grid as one of our flagship projects, prioritizing alternative and renewable sources of energy and invest in indigenous sources of natural gas and oil. Economic growth is important, but it's only a necessary and not a sufficient condition for achieving a full and dignified life. A strategy of inclusive and sustainable growth plays a large part in our agenda. This is the second part of our overall economic agenda. The aim of inclusive growth is for all Filipinos to have access to opportunities to participate in the growth process while making sure that benefits are shared. In 2 words, walang maiiwanan. I quote from Ford Foundation, "A growing body of evidence shows that economic inclusion is strongly associated with longer and stronger periods of growth. Put it simply, reducing inequality is not only a moral imperative, it's an economic one." 6 items comprise our basic poverty alleviation program. Enterprise development. We shall create an enabling environment for micro, small, and medium enterprises. Focus support on agriculture, agribusiness, manufacturing, and tourism. These sectors have the strongest interconnections with the domestic economy. Human development. The people are our most important resource. We shall be investing in quality healthcare and education in order to build human capital. Political empowerment and participatory development. We want to empower Filipinos to participate in the process that define our country's path. We'll open up avenues for direct, online, and representative participation for all Filipinos, especially the poor and the marginalized sectors, in making decision levels at all levels of government. We'll establish a comprehensive social protection floor which provides all Filipinos, especially the poor and marginalized, with sufficient protection from life cycle, economic environment, and governance risks. No Filipino should be bankrupt because of sickness, sudden unemployment, or calamities. We will continue and, in fact, expand the Conditional Cash Transfer Program, or the CCT. We will increase coverage to include cash for livelihood skills and training programs. In conclusion, these are just a few of our programs and projects that we are planning to do. Achieving high growth and addressing social inequality are not inconsistent programs of government. We will be doing our best to alleviate poverty while maintaining high growth. With your help, we can be a globally competitive country driven by a culture of excellence, no less. Maraming salamat. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Mayor Gachalan, for explaining the positions of Senator Poe. I'd now like to call on Chairman Kimbo, and may I ask you to explain the positions of Secretary Rojas.
Secretary Mar wished he was present here today to present his programs as well as to hear your testimonies in person, but unfortunately his schedule will not permit it today. He asks for your deep understanding, and he assures you that you are always in his thoughts. Let me read the speech of Secretary Mar Rojas. His speech. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be part of the Arangkada Forum, and I would like to thank the Joint Foreign Chambers of the Philippines for inviting me here today to this event. A few days ago, the World Bank's lead economist for poverty reduction and economic management in the Philippines, Roger Van den Brink, announced that under certain conditions, the country can wipe out poverty within a generation. He announced the chief of these conditions in sustaining the trend of growth that is both sustained and inclusive. I want you all to be part of this sustained trend. For the next 6 years, if God willing, we have a Ross administration. Inclusive growth has been brought about primarily by the 4-Piece program, our globally renowned conditional cash transfer program. We have funded it through the economic growth fueled by the Aquino government's commitment to transparency, good governance, and fair play, and spurred by the Filipino sense of enterprise. And we look forward to even greater economic growth and more investments in our people for us to reach first world status in 1 generation. We want you all to be part of this success story. We want you to help us invest in the Filipino, in more knowledge, talent, and skills for our people. It will not only benefit your businesses or the society at large, it will ultimately afford all generations of Filipinos the means to fulfill their dreams. And what can you expect with the continuation of Daang Matuwid? The ease of doing business. We need ease of doing business to be more competitive. Competition means more opportunities for our people, leading to stable incomes. This means more revenues for the government to invest in human resources, leading to a virtuous cycle of inclusive growth. We're going to start with what I've often called the Department of Common Sense. We will review rules, see what works, see what we can simplify, see what policies and practices we can keep, and see the things that we can do without. During my time in the DTI, the problem I always heard from investors was not that the Constitution stopped us from doing business. No. I heard more complaints of harassment from government agencies, LGUs, even barangay officials. I remember that Intel Corporation in Cavite was almost shut down by a mayor that simply had a major disagreement regarding a garbage contract. If you do business all over the country, you have to deal with the governor, the mayor, the barangay captain for each and every site that you will be located. Each locality has its own set of rules and regulations. It doesn't need constitutional change to fix these things. Any talk of changing the Constitution must be well considered. After all, it means a lot of investors would have to adopt a wait-and-see attitude. Economic activity could be restrained or stagnate at an enormous cost, while everyone adopts this wait-and-see attitude. Once you talk of removing restrictions on foreign ownership, you open discussions on other matters outside of economic ownership. Resolving all that could take a year or two, maybe even more. It will not produce the benefit and relief that simply fixing regulations would bring to local and foreign companies. A more careful cost-benefit analysis should likewise be applied to trade agreements, especially those concerning free trade areas. Each agreement must be weighed on its own merits. Is it good for the Philippines? Is it good for businessmen? Is it good for you, our investors who are already here? We intend to scrutinize each and every agreement as it comes to ensure maximum benefits for all concerned. And as investors, you are our stakeholders. You will have a strong voice as we consider these matters. Which leads us to the issue about the rule of law and existing agreements. We absolutely adhere to the rule of law. So long as contracts are fair, above board, and made in good faith by all parties concerned, there should be no worries. And this applies to both government and investors, both foreign and local. We want to establish long-term relationships with all of you, but not at the cost of onerous transactions that would harm the interests of stakeholders, both in the short and long term. To this end, consultation and openness are essential. In all decisions on the matter of policy, our overriding concern is always the welfare of the Filipino family. We want every family to be free from hunger, free from fear, and free to dream. These are freedoms that require a strong economy, and they beget an even stronger economy. As investors, you would be happy to know that I am strongly committed to maintaining and improving the principles of transparency, consultation, good governance that has brought us to this point in our economy. These are the very same principles that would bring the Philippines and your business further along the road to prosperity. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you, Chairman Kimbo, for explaining Secretary Rojas's position. We now move on to the questions for round one. Really, in order of speaking, we will now ask Mr. Payne and Mr. Barcelone to ask the questions. There will be 2 rounds, if time permits. There will be actually no questions from the floor, but any questions for the candidates should kindly be handed in or emailed to Arangkada. So first up, we have Mr. Payne. If you could please ask your question to Secretary Tevez. Julian?
First of all, Secretary, my apologies for the confusion earlier on, but I will ask a slightly different question as a result. The Philippines has one of the most restrictive regimes regarding foreign direct investment. And this has actually, we believe, resulted in very low rates of foreign investment. Will you support reintroduction of joint resolution of both houses submitted by Speaker Belmonte in this Congress? And secondly, will you support deletion of all items in the foreign investment negative list with the exception of those specifically mentioned in the Constitution and or in the national security interests? Thank you.
Yes, we will. I think we already have an extensive discussion of the Belmonte Drilon proposal under the present Congress. And we will try to dovetail with the suggestions under the foreign investment negative list, which right now, most of which cannot really be tinkered or amended because these are also embodied in the Constitution. So that will be given first priority. As discussed earlier, the United Presidency will convene the LADAC and try to ensure that this will be included among the priority measures certified in the first 100 days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Tevez. Next question, Mr. Barcelona, could you kindly ask your question to Senator Cayetano?
Good morning. Good morning, Senator Cayetano. Mayor Duterte has expressed concern about EDCA, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. And he mentioned that he thinks that no American soldier will die for the Philippines. Now, in view of this, what is his plan as far as national defense so that we will be less relying on the EDCA? And corollary to this, we do have issues with China in the South Sea issues. And what are his plans to work this out? Thank you.
First, hello. Thank you very much for that question, sir. And first of all, one of the strengths of Mayor Duterte is calling a spade a spade. You know? The Americans are allies. I'm half American. My mother is an American from Michigan. I chose to be a Filipino. I chose to serve the Philippines. But I'm also very objective. The Americans knew about the intrusion of the Chinese into the West Philippine Sea, but only started talking more about it in the last few years. When President Obama went to Japan, he categorically stated that if the islands being disputed by Japan and China, if China intrudes into it, the Americans will be there to defend Japanese territory. We asked the same question, our media asked the same question to President Obama here, and he gave a generic answer, which is that we have the Mutual Defense Treaty and that the U.S. will stand with the Philippines. He did not give any categorical statement that if they continue to build, if they enter Spratlys or anything of these islands. So it is just a fact. Mayor Duterte was just saying a fact that they are friends, they are allies, but we can't depend on them completely because like us, they have their own national interest. So when their national interest aligns with ours, we can depend on them. But when their national interest does not align with ours, because they also have a lot of dealings with China, no, we cannot depend on them. So Mayor Duterte is for self-sufficiency. That's why he went to Camp Darapanan to meet with the MILF. That's why he's in touch with the Philippine left. He believes that to harness the strength of our military, we have to have peace in the Philippines. A house divided is a house that will fall, that cannot address outside issues. Number two, he believes that a strong country that is strong economically will eventually be strong militarily. But there has been no case in the world where a country became a military power before they became an economic power, even China. No? Although they've always had a lot of troops, a lot of arms, no? It is only in the last 20 years when they had double-digit growth that they could exert their muscle in this part of the world. So the core of our platform will really be federalism, starting with economic federalism, decongesting Metro Manila. 1/3 of our budget goes to Metro Manila. 65%, 65 to 75% of PPPs are in Metro Manila, which is okay because that's what makes money. But the budget cannot all go to Metro Manila. So putting some of the departments out, harnessing the strength of the different regions. No? But we will continue our relationship with the U.S. and other allies. We will, by the way, no, we gave the EDCA for free. No? There's no rent. There's no guarantee of military equipment or training. This is all goodwill. So if the U.S. does not like our stand in any issue, they can stop compensate. They do not have to compensate us for EDCA. So all we're saying is, yes, deal with the Americans. Let's have EDCA, but let's negotiate from a position of strength and also be a good ally.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano. Next question, Mr. Payne, if you could kindly ask Mayor Gatchalian your next question.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. One of the great problems in the Philippines, and a continuing one, has been unemployment and underemployment. It remains unacceptably high in almost everybody's judgment, particularly in remote areas and particularly for the youth. What specific programs does your candidate plan to implement added employment in remote areas and for the youth? And secondly, do you have a specific timeline in which you expect to accomplish this during your administration, if you had it? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Senator Poe has been very, very clear that development of human capital is one of her top priorities. When we say we develop human capital, it goes beyond just healthcare, but it also looks at education. See, misemployment, mismatch in employment, underemployment, all stems from the fact that, number one, most of our youth are ill-equipped to compete or to jump into the jobs that are available in the marketplace. In Senator Poe's case, she wants to bat for, number one, retooling and refocusing of our state universities and making sure that they invest heavily in math-based or engineering or science-based courses. We all know that math and science is the way to go, and retooling our youth to make sure that they are well equipped to face the challenges of a shrinking world environment, wherein we're now forced to compete with professionals from the different countries because of online capabilities. Now, part of her perspective is, number one, to make sure that we know what industries we want to invest in. We make sure that the sectors that we want to foster and to incubate are the industries that will generate the most number of jobs. Now, corollary to that, we make sure that we invest in the youth by making sure that the educational attainment that our state universities or colleges, whichever they are offering, is equipped and tooled and matched for the different type of jobs that these sectors are about to churn out. Now, she has been working closely with churning out numbers to make sure that universal access to tertiary education is readily available in the far-flung provinces, making sure that we implement the UNIFAS law, which is granting loans and grants to underprivileged children or underprivileged youth who may want to pursue careers that are want to pursue tertiary education. So in short, her approach is, number one, to identify the sectors, which is manufacturing, agriculture, and higher yielding sectors, to make sure that we incubate these sectors, make sure that they churn out the number of jobs that we need, and the other side of it is to make sure that there's universal access to tertiary education for our youth.
Thank you, Mayor Gatchalian. Mr. Barcelone, could you kindly ask your question to Chairman Kimbao?
Congress Kimball, the issue on our foreign direct investments is quite lagging behind other ASEAN countries. Primarily, one of the things that's holding us back is our infrastructure. We had quite a series of problems with the port congestions, traffic, and also our ITC, which is quite lagging behind. The information communication permeates through corporate and private lives, also in education, and also in tourism. What would the administration of Secretary Rojas do to get the key players involved in this with commitment on timelines? This has been discussed in many years, but we as a subscriber, we know even our mobile services has a lot to be desired. You cannot take a call in 3 minutes without any drop signals. So maybe you can elaborate on this, Congressman. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think when you look at the way infrastructure spending has happened over the last 5.5 years, in terms of acceleration or growth, you have not seen such a tremendous growth relative to GDP. When this government started in 2010, infrastructure expenditure was just a little over 3% of GDP. The target was actually 6.5%, but currently it's already at literally at 5% of GDP. And you see it all over. You see traffic being caused as you go out of town, and you see many of the other ports that are being built. Certainly, there's more space or more things that can still be done to improve it. But very few people realize that the reason for which we have had a tremendous growth in infrastructure is precisely because we've had a better system in terms of budgeting, and more importantly, is that our infrastructure department is not as corruption-fraught as it used to be. You look at the number of participants that we've had in terms of those coming with the private sector, the biggest problem already, in fact, in the last 28 months has been actually looking for competent private sector participants or contractors who can take on these massive developments. So even in that respect, the growth in terms of money available for infrastructure, the talent pool, or at least the capacity building, has not managed to actually keep up with that. And that in a sense has become a challenge. You look at Yolanda, there was a substantial amount of money that was dedicated precisely because we are able to collect more taxes today. From 12.1% of GDP, it has increased to almost 14% of GDP today. It's still below what the other ASEAN countries are doing, but the increase in revenue that we've had with Yolanda allowed us to provide for more funds. But when you went down to the affected areas, you had a scarcity of engineers who could actually carry out or come up with project estimates, all these engineering plans that were needed to implement it. And the government itself had to hire new engineers to be able to generate these plans that were needed to bid them out. But obviously, infrastructure today is a major portion of the accomplishments of the Aquino administration. I think people don't just realize also that nobody foresaw that the benefits of the Matuwid would be such that the airports that we had built in Bohol or that we built in Palawan or even in Cagayan de Oro, from the time that they were anticipated 5 or 6 years ago, by the time they are built, they are already over capacity. You had more than 50 million domestic tickets issued last year. Nobody could have anticipated that amount of travelers would take place. So obviously, these are things that need to be addressed. And going back to just on investments, I think there's a lot of talk on constitutional change. I've always been one to espouse constitutional change. But SECMAR has realized that there are just basic things when he was in DTI, the way by which we were able to generate 1 million jobs in the call center facilities. We were able to do that not by changing the Constitution, but simply by having a better PEZA, a better BOI, and PEZA is an example that even within this constitutional framework, we can do business, and business can be easy, and business can be taken care of by government. I'm sure you all agree with that. And lastly is, when you look at the BPO sector, it's a significant step that people miss out on, that in terms of employment, it has generated 1 million jobs in the last 5 years. It creates foreign direct investment, money coming from abroad for an industry has no relation to the business climate in the Philippines. It's actually OFWs being generated, but instead of them being sent out to address the needs of foreign clients, they are here. They're spending their money 100% in the local economy. They are paying local taxes, unlike our OFWs, yet more importantly, they partake in the increase in the velocity of our economy. And, these are things that have been done. You talk about cabotage, you talk about the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act. These are things that are meant to make business easier and wouldn't even have to change the Constitution. And very, very lastly, I spoke the shortest for the main part, if you will grant me this, is that, you look at the Constitution, the biggest stumbling block there are definitions. We can actually open up utilities. You talk about telecom, you talk about electricity. We can actually open up these companies to foreign investments without changing the Constitution simply by changing the Public Service Act. It has not changed since 1938. It's been there for the longest time. It has barely moved in the last 65 years. Simply by redefining what a public utility is, will actually allow you to be able to invest in it and remove the nationality requirements. And yet, most importantly, without even having to go back to Congress to get a franchise, which I think is a major stumbling block for many of our investors. These are things that we can do, which SECMAR is saying that we can do even without having to go through a painful process of constitutional change.
So John, I think we've run out of time now. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. We wish success to all the candidates in their campaigns and look forward to hosting the new president later this year. Let's give our guest a big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our dear panelists, may we ask you to please come forward for a quick photo before we introduce the next panel. Gentlemen, may we ask you to please come to the center of the stage for a quick photo. Okay, thank you very much. And now to start our first panel.